Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Jody, and on my channel I talk about Broadway and books. And in today's video, I will be giving a spoiler review on the latest book that I have read. So normally in my spoiler-free book reviews on my channel, I go over a few things, such as what the book is about and some general information on the book, my thoughts, my star rating. So without any further ado, let's get on to today's spoiler-free book review, and that would be for the book The Girls by Emma Cline. So as far as what the book is about, it's the summer of 1969 in Northern California. Evie Boyd is 14 years old. Evie finds herself one sunny summer afternoon at a park where a barbecue is happening. And as she sits alone on a park bench, she notices three girls enter the park, and she's not the only one who notices them. Everyone in the park does, and that's because these girls are making a bit of a scene. They are acting erratically and laughing loudly and nothing funny in particular. And while most in the park are very taken back by their presence because of how they are acting, Evie feels the complete opposite. She sees these girls and just thinks how they seem so carefree and happy, full of life, and how they don't really seem to care at all what anyone else thinks of them. And the oldest girl in the group, Suzanne, sees Evie and smiles at her, and it's in this moment that Evie feels seen, really seen for the first time in her whole entire life. It's the kind of attention she rarely gets from others, and so Evie finds herself not only wanting to get to know who these girls are and be friends with them, but she also finds herself wanting to be exactly like them, and she wants to go wherever they are going and be a part of whatever they are a part of. So that's basically more or less what The Girls is about. Now for some general information on the book. The genre is historical fiction and literary fiction. The amount of pages is 355 in paperback, which is how I read the book. The timeline is the story goes back and forth in time between the summer of 1969 and the present day. And for point of view, we only hear one point of view in the story, which would be from our main character of Evie. The story is also told in the first person as well. So now for my thoughts on this book, I really liked it. I would say as of now, this is my favorite book that I've read of this year so far. Now, before I get into the reasons for why I thought this was a good book, I just want to point out first that this is the first book by Emma Cline that I've read so far. And this was actually the author's debut novel as well. Just super cool that I ended up reading this book before I read anything else that they have written. And, you know, they've written a few things since a short story collection, and they wrote a book called The Guest that came out a little over a year ago, which was pretty popular around the time it came out. I actually got that book around the time it came out, but surprise, surprise, have not read it yet. But definitely excited to read that now, for sure. Now for why I thought this was a good book. The first being, well, there are three reasons, I should say. The first being was the writing. The writing in this book was just so unique and original, and really grabs a hold of your attention. Every single sentence in this book, like every single sentence, was like another novel in itself. The writing was just so descriptive and emotional, deep, profound, and thought-provoking. This is a book that really makes you think and feel something, and that's thanks in large part to the writing of Emma Cline. Emma Cline is just a truly remarkable writer, and The Girls is not only a book, but also like a piece of art because of the writing. The writing was just so incredibly beautiful and moving, and you know, after reading this book, what I take away from it the most is the writing, just because it was done in a style and manner in which I've never seen in any book that I've read so far to date. Just truly incredible. The second thing that really stood out to me in this book was how the story went back and forth in time between the summer of 1969 and the present day, and how the story really showed how even though so much in life has changed since 1969, how some things have ultimately remained the same throughout the years as well. When reading the 1969 portion of the story, it really felt like the author did their research on what it was like to be alive at this time and what life was like at this time, how the world was a more carefree, more simple, more innocent time in many ways, but how in other ways it was a time that wasn't that far different from the times we live in today, how the world can be a scary place at times, how we live in uncertain times. That all very much existed in 1969 just as much as it does today, and I thought the way that was portrayed and depicted in the book was really well done. And the last thing that really stood out to me in this book was the story. It was just a truly heartbreaking and tragic story about what can happen to someone when they're young and naive, lonely and vulnerable, seeking love and attention to all the wrong people in all the wrong places. Evie's story was just truly heartbreaking to read. It's a story I will not soon forget. And after you finish the book, you really end up feeling a lot of empathy for Evie, for what she's been through, and how that has affected the rest of her life. When Evie gets involved in the community that she gets involved in the summer of 1969, she's only 14 years old, and she can't yet see in that moment how being involved in this community, how it can and will ultimately have a long-lasting impact on her future and the rest of her life, and how it will change her as a person. And when we meet Evie in the present day, we see the long-term effects and the impact that time of her life had on her. And while she has been able to move on from that time, she at the same time has never fully been able to ever let go of the trauma that she experienced that summer. Specifically when it comes to relationships, for the most part, she's always very much, since kept others at a distance, never fully allowing anyone to really get to know who she is. And she's also had a hard time with trusting others, and she's also had a hard time trusting herself with others since that time as well. And essentially a part of her soul and spirit just never left the summer of 1969 and is stuck back there, and she's never really been able to fully get that part of herself back to herself. And yeah, this was just a story, like I said, that will very much stay with you after you read it. And yeah, so those are my thoughts on the book. As far as my star rating goes, like I mentioned earlier in the video, this is my favorite book that I've read of this year so far. So it shouldn't come as a huge surprise to hear that I gave this book 5 stars. Now, as far as is this a book I would recommend? Clearly, I like this book. It's my favorite book that I've read of this year so far, and a new favorite book of mine now for sure as well. So I would highly recommend this to read. I think honestly anyone would like it. That being said, I do feel like I should probably point out that this is a very heavy, dark, unsettling, and disturbing book to read at times. This was not an easy book to get through. I really had to take my time reading, you know, the story. There was a lot to take in and process. I really did feel the weight of every sentence, of every chapter, of every page of this story, just because it was such an incredibly, you know, sad, tragic, depressing kind of story. So, I mean, if you know, the story does sound interesting to you, but you don't feel like you're at a place where you're ready to read like a pretty heavy story, I would suggest, you know, waiting till you're at a place where you feel like you can, if the story sounds interesting to you. But like, you know, I myself always tend to gravitate towards really sad, tragic, depressing kind of stories. So I myself am not surprised that I like this book a lot. But, you know, I do feel like you should, you know, perhaps, you know, this isn't, you know, sad, depressing stories aren't your thing. Maybe skip this book, I guess I could say, because it's very heavy and very, very sad. But, you know, I like this book a lot regardless. Now, before I end this video, I always like to point out whenever a book I review on my channel is going to be adapted or has an adaptation already. This book, it was announced a few years ago that it was going to get a TV series adaptation on Hulu. Now, I have not read any new information about this adaptation since, so who knows if it's happening. I really hope it does, because like I said, I really like this book, and if the adaptation was done well, I think it could be really great. But, you know, who knows? It was a few years ago that announcement was announced. So, I mean, hopefully, because I really would love to see this on TV as a TV show. I think it would work really great. But, yeah. So, if you made it to this part of the video, I sincerely thank you for taking the time to watch my spoiler-free review on The Girls by Emma Cline. And I hope I helped you discover a new book today as well. And as always, thank you so very much for watching. Until next time, bye.